The 50 marriage rules that backfired spectacularly. The contract was waiting on my pillow when I came home from my business trip. Not just a list, a full legal document, complete with signatures, lines, and witness requirements. Marriage improvement contract was printed across the top in bold letters, followed by 50 numbered rules that would govern every aspect of my life. My wife Natalie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me read. She looked different somehow, more confident, almost predatory. "What the hell is this?" I asked, holding up the 10-page document. "Our new arrangement," she said simply. "I've been doing a lot of thinking while you were away, Marcus. Our marriage needs structure. These rules will provide it. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one." I started reading, and with each rule, my blood pressure climbed higher. Rule 1. All income goes into joint account managed solely by Natalie. Rule 7. No contact with female colleagues outside of direct work necessity. Rule 15. All social media passwords must be shared. Rule 23. Gym time limited to 45 minutes, 3 times per week. Rule 31. All purchases over 25 require written permission. Rule 38. Weekly performance reviews of husband's behavior. Rule 45. All meals must be eaten together unless pre-approved. Rule 50. Contract violation results in $500 penalty deducted from personal allowance. "You can't be serious," I said, flipping through pages of restrictions that would make a prison warden blush. "I'm completely serious. I've already consulted with a lawyer. This is legally binding once we both sign." I stared at my wife of 9 years, barely recognizing her. The supportive, loving woman I'd married had been replaced by someone who apparently wanted to micromanage my breathing. "Where did this come from?" "Dr. Miranda Blackwell's seminar," she said proudly. "She's revolutionizing marriages across the country. Successful women taking control of their relationships instead of settling for mediocrity." Dr. Miranda Blackwell. I'd heard that name before. The self-proclaimed relationship guru who charged desperate housewives $5,000 for weekend seminars on reclaiming your power in marriage. You paid someone to teach you how to control your husband? I paid someone to teach me how to create a marriage where I'm valued and respected instead of taken for granted. And this is your solution? A legal contract that treats me like an employee? This is my solution to 7 years of you doing whatever you want while I sacrifice everything for this relationship. I almost laughed. 7 years of sacrifice? I was the one working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, her shopping habits, and apparently now her expensive seminars on how to dominate me. "I need time to think about this." "There's a deadline," she said, pointing to Clause 52. "You have 48 hours to sign, or I file for divorce. Dr. Blackwell says procrastination is just another form of disrespect. You're threatening divorce if I don't agree to be controlled? I'm offering you a chance to be part of a better marriage. The choice is yours." That night, I read the entire contract 3 times. It wasn't just controlling, it was insane. Rule 19 required me to submit weekly written reports on my activities. Rule 27 gave her veto power over which friends I could see. Rule 34 mandated that I ask permission before changing TV channels. But it was the financial clauses that really caught my attention. All assets would be managed by her. All spending decisions would be hers. My salary would become her allowance to me. I researched Dr. Miranda Blackwell until 3 a.m. What I found was disturbing. Dozens of online reviews from men whose wives had attended her seminars. Stories of marriages destroyed, families broken apart, financial ruin. The woman was running a sophisticated con game, targeting insecure wives and teaching them to financially trap their husbands. But as I dug deeper, I found something else, something that gave me an idea. The next evening, Natalie was waiting for me with the contract and a pen. "Have you made your decision?" "I have," I said, sitting down across from her. "I'll sign your contract." Her eyes lit up with triumph. "But I have a few additions of my own." "That's not how this works," she said quickly. Dr. Blackwell was very clear about a lot of things," I interrupted, "including the importance of equal partnership in marriage." I pulled out my laptop and showed her the screen. It was Dr. Blackwell's website, but not the page Natalie had seen. This is interesting, I said. Dr. Blackwell offers 2 different seminars. The one you attended, Taking Control of Your Marriage. But look at this other one, Recognizing Financial Abuse in Relationships. Natalie's face went pale. In fact, I continued, Dr. Blackwell specifically warns women about husbands who try to control their finances, isolate them from friends, and monitor their every move. Sound familiar? That's different. Is it? Because according to her own literature, financial control is the #1 sign of an abusive relationship. Having to ask permission for purchases over 25? That's textbook financial abuse, Natalie. She grabbed for the laptop, but I pulled it back. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. I'll sign your contract, but with one modification. Every single rule applies to both of us equally. That's not. Rule 1. All income goes into joint account managed solely by the designated spouse. Great. Since I make 80 of our household income, I'll be the designated manager. You can't do that. Rule 15. All social media passwords must be shared. Perfect. I'll need yours first since you're the one demanding transparency. This isn't what Dr. Blackwell taught. Rule 31. All purchases over 25 require written permission. Excellent. I noticed you bought this 5,000 seminar without asking me. That's a 4,875 violation right there. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the realization that her perfect control system would enslave her just as much as me. Marcus, you're being ridiculous. I'm being fair. Everything you're asking of me, you should be willing to do yourself, unless, of course, you believe you deserve special treatment. These rules are designed to create structure. These rules are designed to create control. And if you want control, then you need to prove you can live under the same restrictions you're imposing. I stood up and headed toward the bedroom. Think about it tonight. Tomorrow we either sign a mutual contract where every rule applies to both of us, or we tear this thing up and have a real conversation about our marriage. And if I refuse, then I guess we'll see just how serious you are about that divorce threat. The next morning I woke up to find Natalie sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the contract with red-rimmed eyes. I called Dr. Blackwell last night, she said without looking up. Oh? What did she say? She said I was letting you manipulate the situation, that I needed to stay strong and not let you turn this around on me. And what do you think? Natalie finally looked at me, and I saw something that hadn't been there before. Doubt. I think she charges $300 an hour for phone consultations and has a vested interest in keeping me convinced that this is working. That's a start. Marcus, I need to ask you something honestly. Do you think I'm trying to control you? I sat down across from her, choosing my words carefully. I think you're scared. I think someone convinced you that our marriage was broken and sold you a solution that would make everything worse. But what if our marriage is broken? What if I do sacrifice everything and get nothing back? Then we fix it together, with conversation, counseling, compromise, not with contracts and control. She was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you what really happened at that seminar? Please. Dr. Blackwell had us do this exercise where we listed everything we did for our husbands versus everything they did for us. She taught us to see every household task as evidence of inequality, every hour at work as avoiding family responsibility. And how did that make you feel? Angry, resentful, like I'd been taken advantage of for years. Had you been? I don't know anymore. When she was talking, it all made sense. You worked long hours, but that was your choice. I managed the house, but that was undervalued. You made financial decisions, but that was controlling. What do you think now? Now I think she taught us to keep score in a game where everyone loses. I reached across the table and took her hand. What if we tried something radical? What if we threw away the scorecard entirely? What would that look like? It would look like trusting each other. It would look like talking when we're unhappy instead of creating systems to force compliance. It would look like being teammates instead of adversaries. Natalie stared at the contract for another minute, then slowly tore it in half. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I lost myself somewhere in all of this. We both did, but we can find our way back. That afternoon, Natalie called Dr. Blackwell's office and requested a refund. She was told that all sales were final, and that her marriage problems were clearly the result of her failure to properly implement the system. She actually said that if you weren't signing the contract, it proved you were an abuser who was manipulating me into staying in an unhealthy relationship. And what did you tell her? I told her that healthy relationships don't require legal contracts to function. We spent the next 2 weeks having the conversations we should have had years ago about work-life balance, household responsibilities, financial decisions, and what we both needed to feel valued in our marriage. I learned that Natalie had been feeling unheard for months, that she felt like I made major decisions without consulting her, that her contributions to our household were invisible, that our marriage had become more like roommates than partners. She learned that I'd been feeling unappreciated, that I worked long hours not to avoid home, but to provide the lifestyle we both wanted, that I made financial decisions alone because she'd always said she wasn't interested in boring money stuff. We both learned that we'd stopped talking to each other and started talking past each other. The changes we made were simple but transformational. Weekly check-ins where we could voice concerns before they became resentments. Joint financial planning sessions where we both participated in major decisions. A household task system based on preference and availability, not gender roles. Date nights where we focused on each other instead of our phones. Most importantly, we learned to see our marriage as a collaboration rather than a competition. 3 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Henderson, this is James Walsh. I got your number from online. My wife attended the same seminar as yours, and now she's trying to get me to sign a similar contract. Over the next hour, I walked James through what had happened with Natalie and me. I told him about the research I'd done on Dr. Blackwell, the warning signs I'd identified, and the strategy that had worked for us. The key, I explained, is not to fight the contract itself, but to expose its true nature by insisting on equality. What if she refuses? What if she's serious about divorce? Then you'll know this isn't about improving your marriage. It's about control, and you'll have your answer about whether this relationship is worth saving. 2 weeks later, James called back. His wife had torn up their contract too. How did you know that would work? He asked. Because these contracts aren't really about marriage improvement. They're about power. And people who truly want power over others can't tolerate being subjected to the same restrictions they impose. Over the next 6 months, I heard from 17 different men whose wives had attended Dr. Blackwell's seminars. 15 of them used the equality strategy successfully. The other 2 discovered that their wives were more interested in control than partnership. And those marriages ended in divorce. But they ended honestly, with both parties understanding what was really at stake. Meanwhile, Natalie and I continued building something better than what we'd had before. Not perfect, but real. Not controlled, but collaborative. The most telling moment came 9 months later when Natalie's friend Sarah called, crying about her crumbling marriage. She wants Natalie to attend another seminar, I overheard from the kitchen, something called Advanced Relationship Management Techniques. What did you tell her? I asked later. I told her that the best relationship management technique is treating your partner like a partner instead of a problem to be solved. And how did she take that? She accused me of being brainwashed by my husband and said Dr. Blackwell warned about women who backslide into accepting mediocrity. Mediocrity? Apparently, any marriage where the woman isn't completely in control is considered settling for less than we deserve. I shook my head. That woman has destroyed more marriages than infidelity and financial problems combined. The scary part is how believable she is. When you're in that room, surrounded by other women who are angry and frustrated, her solutions seem so logical. Until you try to live with them. Until you try to live with them, she agreed. A year later, Dr. Blackwell's operation was shut down by the state attorney general's office. Turns out, several of her success stories were planted testimonials, and her credentials were largely fabricated. The investigation found evidence of dozens of marriages destroyed, families bankrupted, and emotional damage that would take years to repair. Natalie and I watched the news coverage together, holding hands on our couch. I could have been one of those testimonials, she said quietly, but you weren't. You chose us instead. What made you so sure that equality strategy would work? I thought about it. Because genuine solutions always work both ways. If something is truly good for a marriage, Both partners should be able to live with it. And if they can't, then it's not about the marriage, it's about something else entirely. The contract that started this whole ordeal is gone, shredded and forgotten. But the lessons we learned from it remain. We learned that trust can't be legislated, respect can't be demanded, and love can't be controlled. We learned that the strongest marriages aren't built on rules and restrictions, but on mutual understanding and shared values. Most importantly, we learned that the moment you need a contract to enforce your partnership, you've already lost what made it worth having in the first place. Today, 2 years later, our marriage is stronger than it's ever been. Not because we follow a set of rules, but because we choose each other every day. Not because one of us is in control, but because we're both committed to something bigger than our individual desires. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd simply refused to sign that contract, if I'd fought against it instead of turning it around. Would we have ended up in divorce court? Would we have spent months in bitter legal battles? Maybe, but I'm glad we'll never know. Instead, we learned that the best way to handle someone trying to control you isn't to fight for control yourself. It's to insist on the one thing that threatens all forms of unhealthy control: true equality. The contract was designed to give Natalie power over me, but requiring her to live under the same rules gave us both something more valuable: the power to choose our marriage freely, without coercion or manipulation. That's not just better than control, it's better than anything control could ever provide. If this story opened your eyes about relationship manipulation and the power of standing firm on your principles, follow for more honest stories about love, betrayal, and the boundaries that save marriages. Because sometimes the best way to save your relationship is to refuse to play games with it.